white zone is for immediate...
Wait a minute. Have you heard?
This is a show to keep you on the edge of your seat.
Citizens of America,
Welcome to the Radiocast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Radiocast, where we take what we show on Old Time Movie and Old Time TV, all the episodes from the public domain, and we come in the podcast room and talk about what we decided to show. So this month, because of Christmas, we decided to do some Christmas specials. So for Old Time Movie, we came with somewhat well-known Santa Conquers the Martians, and for Old Time TV, we did a TV movie version of a very popular movie, Miracle on 34th Street. So today we have myself, Adam Carrero, your host, and we also have Jack Kelleher with us, and Joe Borman, and Joe Taff.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So we'll start because it'll probably be a little shorter just because everybody kind of knows Miracle on 34th Street. But the version that we chose was from 1955. It was aired December 14th. And it was made for Century Fox, for them to show on TV. And we'll talk about that. It's a little shorter version. So it's kind of one of those cheat sheet movies. You kind of watch it quick, get the basics in and out, and you kind of get the idea of Santa and the whole if he's real or not throughout the movie. But it came the same message, but it was a quicker version. So let's go around the table. What do you guys think about it?
Yeah, I'm not sure about everyone else here. Like, I've seen the original Miracle on 34th Street. Has everyone else here seen the original?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of informs your opinion because I'd seen the original a long time ago when I was a kid, and I really liked it. And I actually rewatched a lot of the clips after watching this. And yeah, kind of as you said, it is pretty much the same story as the original, but a lot more condensed and kind of rushed. And yeah, like I kind of did a scene by scene comparison of just like how quickly of like how this version did it versus the other one. And I did notice that probably because of the runtime that a lot of like not just the scenes itself and the pacing, but a lot of the dialogue also seemed a bit rushed as well, which is probably because they have to condense an entire movie into like half its runtime. But like one scene that stood out in particular was the first scene where Santa or Kris Kringle, as he goes by, like when he's in the mall and sitting on, and a kid comes and sits on his lap and asks for a fire truck. The kid in this episode spoke so quickly, I had to go back 3 times. I had to rewind 3 times to figure out what he said because he just kind of speaks gibberish.
Yeah, I knew he wanted a fire truck, but then it was like, I want a fire truck with this. I'm like, I don't know what kind of fire truck he wants or what this fire truck can do. And back in the 55s, it's like, they're not that high tech, so you really can just go back and forth. Mm-hmm. But even that, and like some of the kind of iconic scenes from it to like show how he's Santa, like they had some jokes like when he sleeps with his beard above the blankets, but like some of the other magical stuff they really didn't showcase in this movie as they did in the original.
I'm interested to hear like the two Joes. What did you think?
What do you think, Joe?
It's a fascinating relic of its time because I don't think something like this gets made anymore. Like if they're gonna do like a remake, like let's say a few years back they did a Disney Channel version of The Parent Trap, like they'll just do their own thing rather than, hey, let's make essentially the syndicated version of this movie and condense it into like 50 minutes or so.
Yeah.
It was interesting, definitely interesting compared to the original, I will say that.
Yeah, I liked the portrayal of Kris Kringle. I thought that he was very wholesome and believable in that role of Santa Claus. I enjoyed the court scenes at the end. I thought that was fun, and just overall the inclusion of the Macy's Day Parade was pretty funny.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, because I was literally watching it on Thanksgiving. It's like a tradition to watch that with my folks, and to see how included that was to the plot was pretty funny. The inclusion of the store and the use of how do I say it, basically the competition between the different stores and how Kris Kringle kind of demolished that. It was definitely interesting. I thought overall it was of its time. It's a bit of a relic, like you said, Joe, but enjoyable.
Yeah, and I can like when he does like the psych test, he was like, "Oh yeah, you just gotta look at your fingers. This is the president, and you gotta touch your nose." I'm like, "Wow, okay,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah." They're willing to throw anybody in the psych. They're willing to throw anybody in the psych ward, but that test is the test to see if you
Seriously.
need to go or not.
The test of all tests.
Yeah, right.
I think I could probably pass that one, even if I wasn't psychologically well.
Yeah, so like something that I was reading about where we mentioned like this was an episode of the TV show the 20th Century Fox Hour, which was basically a anthology show that 20th Century Fox did, where like this was one of several examples where they just took a movie that the 20th Century Fox had already made and basically shortened it down to a 45-minute version. There were several other films they did this for the show, but they were films I honestly never heard of. So I think this was the most famous movie that they did for the show, because the original Miracle on 34th Street actually won and was nominated for a lot of Oscars. Was nominated for Best Picture. The actor who played Kris Kringle, he actually won Best Supporting Actor for the original. And it also won Best Screenplay.
Man.
Yeah, and I think at this time too, like it was probably competing with Walt Disney's, I forget what they called it, but Walt Disney had like a movie night too that they would show short movies, and it was like a Disney night. So this is probably like Fox's kind of compete with it, because at the time I think ABC had Disney still.
Wonderful World of Disney?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Nice pull.
And they would show like shorter movie. Like they didn't remake well-known movies. They just they had the budget to make shorter films.
Yeah.
To kind of compete with.
And they remade this movie a couple of times, right? There's been multiple versions.
Yeah, in the 90s, I think there was a version.
That's something that surprised me when we first said we were doing Miracle on 34th Street. I was like, wait, I thought there was just the one from the 90s with Richard Attenborough. Then I was like, wait, there's 3 other remakes? Because you have this episode for the show, but then there was, in actually 4 years after this episode, in 1959, they made another TV movie adaptation. And then again, in 1973, they made a 4th adaptation. So I was like, oh, there's a lot more remakes of this movie than I thought there were, because I just heard of the original and then that remake in the 90s.
Right. Yeah, that's all I've heard too. And I think this story too is kind of gone on with like the Christmas Carol. Like it's an original story, but there's so many variations.
It's been around a long time.
Yeah, and actually kind of speaking of the variations is something I wanted to talk about, which kind of comparing it to the original, though, like I noticed that like pretty much like word for word, even sometimes shot for shot, is kind of basically a remake of the original film. There were 2 like major changes that stood out to me. One was when he hits the psychiatrist with his cane, because in this television episode, the psychiatrist is giving a speech about how Santa is not real and anyone who believes in him is crazy, and Kris is like, well, he's gone too far, and then smacks him with the cane.
Oh.
And he does it in front of a group of children. And then afterwards, the psychiatrist is like, oh, see, I told you he would go crazy and attack someone. Whereas in the original, that doesn't happen. At least what happens in the original is that the psychiatrist is actually like there's this like kid who works at the store who Kris befriends, who the psychiatrist is kind of gaslighting the kid into thinking he's crazy. Kris goes to confront him and is kind of like, oh, you're a nasty man, like bumps him on the head with the cane. The psychiatrist then fakes a bad injury and lies about what happened. And then he's like, see, I told you he'd go, and like lies and says like, oh, he came bursting into my office and attacked me all because I said he wasn't Santa. Whereas in this episode, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So it kind of proves the psychiatrist right, which I kind of found to be a bit of a baffling change
That's a
from the
choice.
original
It's a
to
choice.
this, because it kind of does make sense. Like Chris look a bit crazy because he just in front of a bunch of kids, nonetheless, just walks in and
Yeah.
just smacks them with the cane.
believes in Christmas, you know.
Yeah,
It's kind of bizarre that, you know, every version of Miracle on 34th requires Santa Claus to like lose his temper a little bit for the plot to get going.
yeah. I think this is the only adaptation where Santa like Chris actually reacts violently, and the others is more of like the psychiatrist lying,
Right, yeah.
or like him being kind of framed for the attack.
right.
But this one I felt was a weird choice. And the other big change, which I actually thought was a change that was actually superior to the original, was at the end with the letters. In the original film, none of the main characters have the idea of like, oh, let's go get all these postcards and have them delivered. That will prove he's Santa because the U.S. government is acknowledging him. And the original is just kind of two random post office employees are like, hey, there's this guy saying he's Santa. Why don't we deliver these letters to him? And in this episode is actually Mrs. Walker who comes up with the idea, which I kind of felt was a better change than in the original because it kind of gave her more to do in this, whereas in the original he kind of disappears for the third act. So that's a change that I kind of felt was actually superior to the
Beneficial.
original.
Yeah, I thought that letter scene was hilarious. Just dropping them all down on the desk, and it kind of I mean, it was very funny in my opinion.
Yeah, between that and they not really using, like you see other like Christmas movies that they try to prove Santa's real. Like Santa has to use like some type of magic, either knowing what somebody wanted for Christmas back in the day, or
Right.
like pixie dust,
Reindeers.
reindeer flying.
Yeah.
Nothing. This was just like
Court case, like
court case. Yep, letters.
Santa
there
beat
we
the case,
go.
man.
That's it.
Yeah, I thought that was so funny. Santa Claus beat the case.
Right.
He had people on his side, which was definitely funny because throughout the whole thing it seems like everyone's against him, but then when it matters most, you know, he's able to bring in some support.
And pull on everybody's heartstrings.
Always. It was a very good portrayal of Santa Claus. I thought he was very, like I said, wholesome, heartfelt, and the relationship with the little girl was sweet. The house was a little bizarre. How did he get her a house?
He was actually, well, the ending kind of implies he might actually really be Santa because how like they find his cane was
cane.
left, kind of
Yeah.
implying that he pulled some kind of Christmas magic to get the
Right.
house for
The
them.
miracle. Yeah, the miracle. I believe. Is that truly the miracle on 34th Street in this version?
Pretty sure the house happened. Him getting the little girl the house happens in pretty much every version, I think. So
Yeah, but I don't think that's the name of the street though.
yeah, I forget what the street
Yeah.
name is.
That's
I think
bizarre.
34th Street is more with New York.
Right.
I don't know if that's Macy's address.
Maybe.
I can't remember.
I definitely thought it was the like I said, the inclusion of Macy's had me laughing. Like just the inclusion of it was genuinely a massive, one of the biggest companies out there at the time, right? I
Yeah.
mean, everyone ordered their toys off the Macy's
Catalog.
Thank
Yep.
you. And just to see that and see just how inundated people were with. And then the other company, you know, like I said, they have a rivalry, but then Santa was almost able to break that down and make them shake hands eventually. I thought that was, you know, interesting and in the spirit of Christmas, you know.
Right. But yeah, it was definitely a movie that just basically everybody kind of knows of the movie, and they just
Right.
kind of shortened this down to shorter version. But
Right.
still, it was just a short tale, just kind of just to pass the time in Christmas, so
Right.
so people can sit around and watch TV.
Yeah, it didn't waste time. I'll
No.
say that. It really didn't. It just got into it.
Constantly
you
quick.
know? Yeah.
So the other movie that we watched that kind of it fits this time because it's Christmas time, but it was like when we started doing this, we started picking movies that either we knew about, was well known, And I think this is kind of like the first movie that's just well known because of the critiquing it was and how bad. So I know like Mystery Science has done an episode on this show, on this movie, I mean. So it's Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, came out in 1964. And it is a science fiction comedy movie, so it does give that fun atmosphere of it. But starting off, like watching it, like it seems like a Christmas movie. It was a good theme song coming in, and so let's start off like what everybody thought of the movie.
Yeah, I had watched the Mystery Science Theater episode with a riff on this movie a long time ago, so I've been aware of this movie for a long time and had technically seen it through that Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is definitely a very infamous Christmas movie of just kind of how absolutely insane it is.
Wild. Truly wild.
Yeah. I believe some of you watched it for the first time. What were your thoughts on it?
I was actually familiar with this movie for a bit. I was at a dollar store years ago and found this DVD of it. Not knowing what it was, I couldn't turn it down from the title. Definitely lived up to the title. It wasn't great. It was entertaining, but all the same, it's a classic. It's definitely of its era of the 60s. I don't know how you'd have that robot or these Martians or anything if it wasn't from right then.
Right.
But definitely got my dollar's worth.
Yeah, overall, I think I thought it was fun for the time. You know, it's been fun to watch a lot of older movies and just check the quality of them and such. There were a lot of shots that were super, super long. They were just sitting there for 10, 15 seconds, you know, a long take of all the actors doing their thing, which I think was, you know, fine. Definitely you see that more often with older films. I thought the Martians were bizarre, and the old ancient mage of Mars, that was one of my favorite parts when they went and talked to that guy.
Yeah, that guy gives a truly incredible performance.
Yes, it was inspired.
Yeah. Like that.
It was Gandalf before Gandalf.
That guy is always like that guy. He acts like he's a million years old. Like every sentence that actor spoke, he sounded like he was 10 seconds away from just dying,
croaking on
just dying on the spot, which he kind of does at the end. Because doesn't he explode when they're done talking to him?
I think disappeared like kind of into nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Fades out. But like, that was hilarious. He was kind of up talking the whole time too. He would end his sentences at the highest note possible. It was just very funny, man.
But yeah, it definitely like watching it, I was like, this movie's not that bad. It definitely captures the Christmas spirit and like the image of Christmas.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing leading up to it, I was like, oh yeah, they go up, they meet Santa, he has his toy shop, the elves. It's when they get Santa to Mars that it just goes downhill. It's just like, oh wait a second, Santa doesn't need elves to make toys. He just needs a machine.
That's right. Yeah.
So him and like 4 kids start doing toys with machines, and
you're not going back to Earth. Santa.
Yeah, and not going back to Earth. It's like,
ho.
it's like we can get you, we got you, but we can't go back. Sorry, it's a one trip. We have all this technology, we just can't bring you back.
Yeah, my favorite part of the kind of the third act, I would say, is when they are about to be shot through the air duct. Or through the vent, and they make it through the air duct, I believe, to get out. And they're like, "Oh, how did you? You're all big and fat. How'd you get through that?" And he's like, "It's magic, man." Because I mean, it's such a classic part of the Santa Claus lore that he sneaks through these chimneys, and you just have no idea how.
Yeah.
But what I think is also very interesting, I don't know if you guys were going to mention this, but I found that this was the first ever on-screen appearance of Mrs. Claus.
Yeah, I read that too, because I don't know if you ever saw the Rankin Bass Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special.
Animated or...
Yeah, the stop-motion one.
Yeah, many times.
This movie actually came out 3 weeks before that aired, so it kind of beat that special to the punch of being the first, a physical depiction of Mrs. Claus, where previously she'd never been portrayed. So
That was very funny to me.
yeah, so that film definitely has a leg up over other Santa Claus films on that.
At least in that regard. That might be the only regard, but at least in that. I also thought, I also thought that his performance as Santa Claus was really good too. You know, I mean, I'm sure it's like not the, I don't want to say I'm not an actor, but like to act as Santa Claus. I mean, people do it in their spare time during Christmas, but again, I thought this was a good performance. He was believable. He was good with the kids. He was all about the Christmas spirit. And I also liked how his elves were like. This was a little bit like, you know, the part in the beginning when there was a toy of a Martian that was totally accurate, and then when the Martians show up, one of the elves is like, "Oh, those are Martians." So like they totally knew. I don't really know how, but like his elves were already aware of Mars and how everything worked down there.
Yeah, and also like the two kids when the kids meet the Martians, they're like, "Oh my God, it's a Martian!" I'm like, how does everyone know what a Martian looks like?
And also, they know what a
No,
Martian
remember
looks
though,
like.
the kid was like, "Are you a television?" The antennas on their head.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
but
was
they didn't
funny.
realize that the robot was a real robot. He just
Santa
just thought it was a big toy.
Yeah.
Oh, who made you?
This is a very well made toy.
Yeah. That's something I also want to mention, which I kind of found funny throughout the movie, is that Santa Claus has no reaction to anything in this movie.
Seen it
like,
all.
a robot comes bursting into his toy shop. He's like, "Oh, ho, look at you. You're a big toy." Martians come to kidnap him. He's like, "Okay, let's go."
all right.
He's all good spirits. It's a Christmas spirit.
They freeze his
Nothing
wi-
bad happens.
They freeze his wife in front of him. He just kind of makes a joke like, "Oh, you've never
she
been
finally
quiet."
stopped
Right, yeah,
talking.
she stopped talking. Yeah.
And then later, like the evil Martian tries to murder him and the kids, just kind of comes back in and starts laughing about it.
Yeah.
Later, again, they come to kill him, and again, he has like no reaction to them. Like,
Yeah.
like he is super chill throughout the entire movie.
That reminds
Just the Christmas spirit.
exactly. That reminds me too of the fight scene between the two Martians. I thought that was hilarious. And then, you know, the one Volcar, whatever his name was, he got his butt handed to him, and then Santa comes in and they have that scene. "Oh, how'd you guys get out?" "Oh, we crawled." And then they kind of just like laugh at him. There was a lot of scenes where there was just like a lot of like hysterical laughing going on with, you know, Santa would start laughing and all the kids would start laughing. But at that point, they were literally laughing at the guy.
Yeah, because he just passes out. Because he
Yeah.
passes out onto the ground, and they all
Yeah.
just start laughing at him.
I thought that was so funny. I'm like, Santa, man, like that's not. I mean, that's a little mean. Like, don't laugh at people. Like,
Now that, and they're like all about Santa, and they want Santa.
Right.
They need Santa to help.
Yeah.
But the second a Martian puts a hat and a beard on,
Yeah,
still wearing his helmet, oh, that's Santa.
there he is.
Santa has antennas, and
Yeah.
just the trickery. I'm like, all right, they didn't take his helmet off. Okay.
I didn't hate the overall plot though. Like when you look
No.
at it from a 1,000-foot view, like it's not terrible. I mean, the concept of like the Martians watching the human TV was kind of funny, but for a minute it almost gave me nowhere near the quality. Right, pretty much the exact opposite of quality, but almost gave me Nightmare Before Christmas vibes in terms of here's this former. I mean, of course, in Halloween Town is scary, and Mars is known as a planet that used to be a war planet in this iteration, which is interesting. But they kind of want to move past the old ways and use Christmas as a means of growth and building something new, even though they're not they are not necessarily the best place for that, if you know what I mean. Like they don't really have the means to come up with Christmas as we do. But I thought that was kind of interesting, a little bit of a parallel to Nightmare Before Christmas as I was watching it, I thought.
And even capturing Santa, like the whole like capturing Santa thing, it was
Yeah,
working
that
good.
too.
It was just like when they got to Mars, it wasn't so much the writing of like even the events as they got to Mars still made out. It's like, no, the villain Martian still wants to get rid of Santa. They got to protect Santa. Santa's trying to help the Mars. Like the concept still worked.
Yeah.
It was just like the execution of shooting it just
Right.
was just
Yeah.
that's where it fell off when it got to Mars.
I felt like they they burned the whole budget, unless they used public domain footage or something. Like they burned the whole budget on the shots of the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah,
you guys
that's-
agree?
Yeah,
There
maybe
was so
that's
much
it, yeah.
stock footage in this movie.
It was stock footage. Okay, because I was like, there's no way that like this is like. There was one shot where like the planes were like close to each other and they're making these crazy maneuvers. I'm like, this is complete. And then you cut into this like really not great set of like the Martian. I mean, it gave the vibe, right? But like it was pretty low budget.
Yeah, the sets reminded me of that Flash Gordon show we looked at.
Yeah.
with
Oh my
just
gosh.
the-
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
the level of attention to detail of
Very similar.
making it look high tech.
The spaceship was similar too. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
kind of funny.
And
Huh.
and kind of talking about the stock footage, that's kind of a little bit of the film I found funny. Is that the Martians kidnap Santa, and there's this whole sequence of Earth being like, "We got to get Santa
Yeah.
back," and they're like, people are volunteering to go, and the U.S. military is getting ready. Then
just goes away.
and then nothing happens. We
Didn't work.
never see Earth again. We never hear
No.
about Earth, and they never attempt to rescue Santa, and that whole
Nope.
subplot is completely dropped.
Just thrown out the window. That was definitely funny. I was thinking the whole time, like, are they gonna just bust in the door? The U.S. Military is gonna show up? Nope.
Yeah. Once
Also, how about the cameo? Basically, like the abominable snowman.
The polar bear.
Yeah, the abominable polar bear.
The greatest polar bear ever depicted on
That was
screen.
so funny. That was definitely just a guy in a suit, right? I
That,
mean,
that was a guy in a mascot outfit crawling on his hands and knees.
They did do a decent job of. At first, I'm like, oh, this thing is a lot bigger than. Well, yeah. I mean, I thought like it looked. They did a good job of making it look bigger than the kids. And then I'm like, oh, that the robot it had a name. The robot had a name. I just don't remember it at the moment.
I don't know.
Something I forget. Whatever, doesn't matter. When that was in the distance, right? And they're like, oh, it's Santa's workshop. Oh, why are the lights moving? And then it starts coming closer. And I'm like, oh, it still looks kind of big. And then the Martians show up and they're the same height
Yeah.
as the robot. And then the robot goes in and steals Santa. It only looked big in comparison to the elves, which is pretty funny. In the distance, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a big, huge robot. This is just like 6 feet tall. But they definitely, I think with the polar bear, they definitely tried to make him seem a little bigger than the kids. And it was a little bit of forced perspective, actually, which I thought was well done. Maybe not Lord of the Rings level, but still all right.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I think it's definitely it is a comedy movie, but
Yeah.
like you wouldn't think it'd be more of a sci-fi movie.
Mhm.
But it still worked out. It wasn't. I think we're gonna come across worse ones if we keep
Probably.
on doing this. But I don't think this one was as bad as first portrayed.
I think it definitely falls under the category of so bad it's good, which is what a lot
Yeah.
of people. That's kind of what it seems like the main perspective on this movie is that it's kind of so bad it's good.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely like bad movies where you never want to revisit because
Mm.
it's just a trudge. This
Right.
is entertainingly bad.
Yeah, I would probably throw this on, next Christmas again.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. Sorry, real quick, another parallel to Flash Gordon is the freeze guns.
Yeah.
What's the odds of that? I mean, the exact episodes that we watched of Flash Gordon had freeze guns, and this did too. I thought that was, even though they didn't actually shoot anything, the actual shooting of the freeze gun was so funny. You just get like a little sound effect, and you can see they're still kind of moving.
Yeah.
The elves. I thought that was so funny. And Mrs. Claus. Poor Mrs. Claus, man. She got frozen in her very first appearance, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a movie that we kind of we know like it was gonna be as bad, but it turned out good. So
Kept me interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so this is gonna wrap up this episode of Radiocast, a little shorter version, since we did a shorter old time TV episode this time around. But make sure you catch all the other Radiocast episodes on our YouTube channel. Go to Easton Cat TV, capital TV, for it, and also check out Old Time Movie and Old Time TV. Not just this month's with Santa Claus, but all the other months. And we do a new one every month, so keep a lookout. So I'd like to thank JoJo and Jack for today's episode, and have a nice day.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.